Radhe Radhe Pratik.
Hare Krishna Menak.
So today we are delighted to welcome Pratik, who is one of the most dedicated helping hand of Tatvaras. So Pratik has completed his masters in statistics from the prestigious Indian Statistical Institute and currently is serving as a senior data scientist of Capital One, which is one of the great multinational banks all over. So Pratik, आज हम इस वृंदावन के पावन धाम में बैठे हैं. So how are you feeling?
Haribol. It has been very nice 2 days. So the audience may not know, but we came to this trip 2 days back, and now we are shooting this podcast. And I would say, in contrast to my last week in office, I was out there shooting my fellow co-workers like we were playing laser tag, laser guns, and it was a completely different atmosphere back then. We have interesting stuff going on over there in my company, especially in my team. That's all very nice and engaging. But coming over here, in a very brief way, I would say it's like recharging my batteries, which is very much required, not just for professional life, but life in general.
So Pratik, so one of the best things in Vrindavan is that every tree there is written this Sri Radhe, and everyone is greeting us with Radhe Radhe. So how does it feel actually?
It feels very, it's a mixture of surreal and blissful. Yesterday we were out there visiting three of the forests in Vrindavan: Kumudvan, Talvan, Madhuvan. Yeah. And the local children over there, bright smiles on their face, not expecting anything at all, just saying Radhe Radhe, Radhe Radhe. It's a very nourishing experience, I would say. I really like it. Especially the contrast is very evident from the usual city life that we may be accustomed to.
So Pratik, as we know, you are from stats background. So why stats? Why not any other thing?
Okay, so I was not originally intending to come to statistics. It was a process of elimination, honestly. I wanted to go into computer science engineering, but I couldn't make it into IIT. So around my towards the end of my class 12th, I was wondering, should I go and do engineering in some place else or do something else? And somehow or the other, I started eliminating a lot of things. Okay, I'm definitely not going to go to history and geography or any such subjects because I don't have the background. Even physics or chemistry, I'm not strong over there. Maths seemed a little strong, and statistics seemed relevant at the time, more so even now. So I thought everything seems eliminated. Let me go with statistics. And when I had heard about Indian Statistical Institute (ISI), it was too late. Honestly, I wish I could have heard about it earlier. But I really like the fact that there's an institution out there which is going to pay me money for studying. As you would also know, you were in the same batch. Very powerful feeling every month, and you get a stipend of 8,000 for studying. uh, Honestly, it feels, till date, even though my salary our salaries may be higher than that, but that feeling of getting money for studying and being in an institute like that, that was very nice and special. So that's why I wanted to go to statistics, and particularly Indian Statistical Institute. The I think the best place to do statistics in India.
Yeah, definitely. So Pratik, as we already know, we are already there in Twitter and LinkedIn for getting updates regarding the job scenarios or for getting placed outside campus, right? So I observed that in LinkedIn or in Twitter, mainly in LinkedIn, that there are some gurus who always post like stuff regarding the interview tips. They share questions which have been asked in their interviews. So, are they misleading or can we trust them? Or how should we know that they are not misleading for the general youth who are currently beginning their journey, professional journey? So, can you share some guidance for them?
Yeah. I can share my thoughts on it, maybe from a slightly different angle. So if I say let's say a truth about what is out there, what actually helps. In general, there are a lot of posts. A lot of posts will have a lot of detailed information specific to various roles and use cases. But if you go one level up and abstract information, what's true is that the depth of things, even if there is a relatively small depth of things, it is much better than a superficial breadth of things. So what I mean is, I have been seeing that there is this tendency of knowing little bit about everything that's out there, and when you present yourself like that in front of the interviewers, naturally they'll get the impression or understanding, it seems like this person knows a lot about these things, so they may cross question you, but then they may find that you only know it superficially. But on the other hand, it may feel counterintuitive that I don't know much about the content or stuff out there, but whatever I know, it's well grounded, rigorous, and I'm confident about it. That's a general thing that I have seen which works. Being upfront about your limitations. If a question comes and you don't know about it, you can be solid and just say the topics that you know. This gives the interviewer this sense of confidence that the person knows what they are talking about, at least, instead of bluffing in there, and you just have say 1 minute or 2 minutes or some seconds to make an impression. So I feel that is a better strategy than trying to pretend to know everything.
Like it's not the breadth but the depth you're talking about.
It, at least in my humble opinion of things, there are situations when you have to, by the job description, know about a lot of things, but for starting your career as such, I would say the interviewers don't really expect you to know a lot of things, because you will learn in the job itself. But they do expect you to be rigorous in what you do know.
So again, we can already see in the newspapers on the news channels that there are constant news about the layoffs that are happening, like in TCS. 12,000 jobs were just gone overnight, or say the FANG companies, Facebook, Amazon, Google, they constantly lay off people. So it means that we need to be prepared for everything, right? Because we need, we have to be prepared that any day our job can also be gone, right? So how can we prepare ourselves so that if it happens, that is not in our hand, right? If a job is taken from us, but how to get another job. So how do you prepare yourself mentally, and also the knowledge you take or the recent news that you stay updated. So what are the sources that you use, and how much time do you give for that?
Yeah, I'll give. There's essentially two things that you are asking. First is maybe how do you cope up with the failures, and second is how do you sharpen your sword, so to speak. How do you keep yourself well equipped to face more battles out there?
Yes, so basically, those who are losing jobs is not because they lack anything, right? Because at the end, if the company doesn't have the money to give, however good the professional is, he will be fired.
Yeah, and on that, I did prepare a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. I'm glad that it came up. So I'll just recite it, and then I'll say how it's relevant. Neha Vikrama Nasosti. Sorry, it's another one. Tatraivam Sati Kartaram Atmanam Kevalam Tuya Pashyati Akrita Buddhitvan Nasa Pashyati Durmati. So in the 18th chapter, 16th verse, Krishna is saying that there are multiple doers, multiple people who are causing an outcome, multiple things that are happening, and to consider that you yourself are the only doer is foolishness. That it all just rests upon your endeavor, it's foolish. There are a lot of multiple factors out there that are influencing things. It could be decision making internal in the company which the potential employees know nothing about. It could be the performances of other candidates. It could be a weak Zoom link which you perceived was strong, and you were just giving answers, and the interviewer didn't quite catch you but didn't also stop you. A lot of factors. So having this kind of cognizance that you yourself are not responsible for your failures or your success, for that matter, because it could just be that you landed a job simply because the better candidate had a poor internet connection that day and they had to make a fast decision. It happens. So having this kind of cognizance that, yeah, I don't have to take the burden of it all, I'm just a small piece in all of this, that spiritual backing really helps you, I would say, to face this. And the second aspect is, how do you stay relevant and up to date? I would say I have a lazy approach about it, in the sense I know I'm not the smartest person in the room, in almost all rooms. So, but I do have an estimate of who those relevant and smart people are. And at least thanks to my time in Indian Statistical Institute, I know people like Menak, and we have another person behind the recording, Spandan. So he's also our friend doing PhD. So I have you guys, I have my friends, some of whom also came to your podcast earlier. I sort of ask very targeted audience to this group of intellectuals that are smarter than me, and I stay up to date with them. So it's like adding a layer of abstraction and filter to the information that you have, because each person has their own specialities, and if you somehow are able to connect with them and get that filtered information, that really saves a lot of time and energy. And another thing that I do, and I have to really thank my company for this because the company sponsors it, is that there are a lot of reputed seminars, conferences, symposiums that are happening out there, where a group of very like minded intellectuals on a particular topic, say artificial intelligence, they come together and share the projects that are happening. So, once again, there is this element of filtering of information. A lot of condensed information is coming at one place. So, it's finding these hotspots of information that I would call, that is more important than just going everywhere for information. It's a time game. You have to make sure that whatever time and investment you are doing, it's in such a place and in in such people from whom you can get maximum benefit of that interaction, instead of serving every LinkedIn article. And I don't do much LinkedIn, by the way, anyway. So I'm sorry if I can't respond very fast to messages.
Okay, so as my last question, the corollary of my last question is, so not only jobs are getting replaced, but the job titles are also getting replaced, right? So what is your educated guess that the job titles that will remain prevalent even in the next year?
If I have to give an honest answer, and I don't want to mislead the audience in any way, I don't know. I mean, honestly, this is one question that I would not be able to answer. Like, what are your opinion? What is your opinion on this?
So as per my opinion is ki those who manage, so there are many limitations in AI. Like the more you dig deep, the more you know that there are many limitations. For example, like basic linear regression, logistic regression, you can interpret the coefficients. You know what does it mean. But in neural network, there are billions of parameters and billions of matrices, and no one knows what those values mean. People are getting good result and they are happy with that. But why they are getting good result, they don't know that. So that is the problem, right? And so one, so those who can know AI properly, it by properly means that not just building an algorithm which can work better than the previous ones, but some sort of intuition that how to interpret them. Then actually that will actually expand, uplift humanity actually, because just building some better algorithms which can perform in one case better than the other but fail in some other cases, nothing more, no more value is getting added actually. But if we can interpret the models, that will actually save many things.
I would completely agree with that. And what you essentially raise is this notion of we have this idea sometimes that predictive power will surpass explainability, but at least in my experience in working in a regulated space like a bank, this is not the case at all. Just because you have an algorithm which is performing very awesome in a training or even testing data set, but despite all the predictive power, you cannot explain 10% of it, the regulators will not allow that model. And taking one step back, if you are trying to stay relevant in the job industry, having a sense of understandability about these algorithms becomes very crucial. Because think of it from this point of view, you have chat gpt that can give you the code, the pseudo code of whatever new methods that are out there. So memorizing that is not the game changer, but understanding the nuances. Because when you truly understand something, the benefit is that you can take pieces of it and fix it to other pieces. You understand two things and you can take little bit of both of them and create a third thing. That is where the creativity, the human ingenuity comes in place, and that is what is going to be rewarding in a space where information is available very easily. It's the ability to understand and manipulate the information according to time, place, and circumstance that is going to be the leverage. So, thank you for inspiring me to come to that answer.
Thank you. So now this will be my next question is a bit relative actually. So, like for my case, so I am just placing the thought. Ki, for example, when I was studying masters in ISI at ISI, so sample survey it was very boring for me, whereas inference was very interesting actually. So in every curriculum there are some boring parts and there are some interesting parts, and they vary among each other. Same goes for corporate also. So, can you share your some of the interesting things that you do that we feel interesting actually, and some of the boring things that we feel they are very boring?
Okay, let me start with the interesting first. What I find very interesting about the work that I do, and I've been very vocal about it to the people in the office as well, is this aspect of the job where you have very limited time to come to decisions. If I take a step back and contrast it with student life, we have quite ample of time, though we may not use it as judiciously as we later realize that we should have had. But it's this aspect of corporate of making decisions in a very tight time constraint that is very interesting. Because the fact that you are able to make a decision and convince other stakeholders means you are very well and thoroughly prepared with your material. It could be as simple as trying to convince the vp vice president of, this is the new feature selection algorithm that we want to try, and let's go the other way where the precedent is not set. Other models have been using that algorithm, but we are going to use this algorithm. And in your mind, you have done a lot of analysis, but think about it, the vice president doesn't have that much time. The vice president will give that slide 1 minute. So the time that you have spent working on it for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe more than months, you have to condense that information in one slide and execute the delivery in 1 minute. And this is what I really like and find most interesting. It is building me up. It is building me up as a person to understand content, whatever content it is, in a way that I can deliver it for 1 minute also, or 60 minutes also. This is very interesting for me. And the boring part, so we work in a regulated space, and as such we have to meet a lot of compliance. It's for safety procedures, but as individual, I really like monkeys. I hope the camera got the monkeys coming around us. So
Vrindavan is famous for this monkey.
yeah, they once we were doing I know we are going a little off topic, but once we did a parikrama and around the Govardhan hill, and a monkey, I think you were also there at that time, he took the spectacles of one of the ladies who was with us, and the priest or pujari was in shock. He was saying in Hindi, 12 साल से कभी देखा नहीं, यहाँ के बंदर भी बदमाश हो रहे हैं. So it was very fun. Yeah, so coming back, the boring part is sometimes it's boring, sometimes it's interesting also. It's that you have to meet a lot of quarterly compliance. So you have to there's this thing called CBT, computer based training, where you have to go through the material and just tick and understand these compliances, which are very technical and legal at times. So that gets a little boring at times, but sometimes those CBTs are also some interesting aspect comes out of it, mostly not. But yeah, and I'm not the only one who says this. Everybody in the company, any company who is in a regulated space, will say boredom with CBT. So it's not just me. Don't hang me for that.
So, so my next question will be a little bit philosophical at first,
I like that.
but it will be helpful for the general audience. So there is a difference in between knowledge and experience, right? So no, so as I have realized, you cannot learn everything just by reading and hearing, but by experiencing yourself, by doing that work. So, can you share some experiences that help, especially the corporate experiences that helped you, that you are today, and you can actually generalize those qualities in everyday life.
Yeah, that's a great question, which gives me the opportunity to speak something which I've come to learn and realize in the last year or so. I've been in the job for more than 2 years, but it was after the initial 6, 7 months that I truly appreciated the beauty of this concept called the Pareto principle. So, for people who may not know about it, it's the principle that if you have to do, say, 100% things, 100% of things, there will be some things in that lot that will just be 20%. So, you have to do 10 things, and maybe one or two of them will give you the results that are 80% of the total results. So it's identifying those opportunities. Everything is not uniform out there. You may see 10 things, and we are initially perhaps brought up with this mindset that mm, we have this bias of treating everything in a linear way, but reality is very non-linear and complex. So there are things which will give you a lot of leverage, and it's identifying those 20% of things that do 80% of the work, which gives you the greatest leverage. This is the Pareto principle. And throughout my journey in these 2 years in Capital One, in the projects that I've been working, I have really come to appreciate the beauty of it. And I will quote my actually manager on this. He said a very superb line. Honestly, it will stick with me for a long time. Like, he told me, Pratik, it's not that you have to show 100% of what you have done on the slide. You have to carefully choose that 20% so that the audience feels that this guy has done 200% of the work. Really, this illustrates the power of Pareto principle. That it's sometimes those small and strategic things that you have to plan out that will give you the maximum outcomes, and doing it in a consistent basis would make you powerful in some sense, I would say.
So, although I know this answer of the next question, but still I will ask you for the general audience. So, apart from studies and your corporate career, so what you do for the rest of the day, or what is your daily life routine?
This is what I do. Yeah, essentially, I like to take out my free time as much as I can um, in investment into quote unquote spiritual endeavors, which is essentially trying to ask more deeper questions about life and the nature of life, to be more happy in general. Uh, like coming to this trip with my friend Menak and the person behind who is also my friend Spandan, it's just a testimony to taking out time for these little spiritual aspects that really recharge my batteries and give me a very nice intuition about how simple it is to be happy. Ultimately, that is what we all are seeking. Like, we started the podcast maybe with questions about corporate career and all. Essentially, we all want to be happy, bottom line. And this is one of spirituality. I know that in the modern day it is very much misleading at times also. But that there is this saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is a lot of nonsense that's happening also, but there is subtle truth also which I really like exploring and participating with like-minded people such as yourself in my free time. That's what I do. And read books, some mostly spiritual books, but also, again, I have to thank my company for this. They have a very nice book collection and recommendation section. So from the library I take up books on, say, finance or well management, and keep myself up to date in that manner. Again, I don't have to read everything that's out there on the internet. It's just that because I happen to be fortunate enough to be in a place where a lot of smarter people have already chosen all these books, it saves a lot of time. Again, it's a kind of Pareto playing out.
So, Pratik, can you share one or two instances that these spiritual endeavors of yours has actually helped you?
Yeah, sure. And again, I thank you for the question because it gives me the opportunity to recite and explain one more verse that I had prepared from the Bhagavad Gita. It goes like this: Neha Neha bhikarmana sosti pratyavayo na vidyate swa alpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Mahato bhayat means great fear. So essentially, in this second chapter and 40th verse, Krishna is saying that
To
just
Arjuna, right?
Arjun, yes, those are the only two people in the Gita.
I don't know actually.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry for assuming that many do. Yeah. So thanks for grounding me on that. So Krishna is saying to Arjun that just a little bit of progress in this path of spirituality, can save one from the greatest fear. Now, initially, when I first read it, I had a hard time. Okay, so what is this greatest fear? One intuitive answer can be death. More or less, everybody is afraid of death. But over the time, and even while preparing for this podcast, I have this. I like to think that the greatest fear is what you think is the greatest fear for you. So it could be as simple as not getting, no, not simple, but as fearful as not getting the dream job that you wanted. You are very much afraid of not having that. That is maybe your greatest fear. So what Krishna is saying, that just a little bit of progress in the spiritual path can save you from the greatest fear. And this is what I've experienced in my personal life as well. During my transition from 12th to undergraduate, I didn't have the good percentage to make it to, let's say, a good college. I was missing out just by a little bit every now and then. Like every good college was running out from my hands, escaping from my hands, and I was very sad about it. I would say it was the darkest time in my career, or maybe even in my life. I was sad, upset about it. But even in that darkest time, what helped? Two things: support of your loved ones, my loved ones, my mother, my cousins, a lot of people actually. And second is this understanding from the spiritual texts, these ancient texts, that get out of your head. Don't think so much about yourself that you are the only doer and only one responsible for your misery and happiness. There are a lot of things out there, and just this coming to terms with the fact that I am not the only big person out there, it is a very stress releasing fact, I would say. It's an acquired taste. It comes through time, that the more you appreciate how little you are, the more less burdensome you feel. And one may ask that, if everybody starts feeling so little, who would do all the work? Like, people would just say, I don't think I'm qualified and all of that. But it has been the opposite in my experience and in the experience of people around me, that this aspect of humility, which is a consequence of spirituality, true spirituality, that makes you grounded and makes you more efficient, because now you are not spending time dealing with your mental issues or mental concoctions about stress, and also that part is very much taken care of, leaving you a lot of free time and happiness to do things that you actually want to do. And when we do things that we want to do, society in general benefits. we can have a conversation about serial killers and all of that as a, exception to that rule perhaps someday. But in general, we are loving creatures, and taking the debris off makes us realize that, and you know be better contributors to our own happiness and the happiness of the society. I feel I'm preaching too much at this point. I should just stop. So this is, I don't know whether that answers or not, but yeah, in a nutshell, this is what happened. I had a dark time, and spirituality, loved ones, and spiritual texts really helped me cope with that.
Yeah, so basically the point about humility that you mentioned. So I also believe that, because how much qualified you are, if you are not humble and if you are arrogant, no one will like to work with you.
That's
And
an
people will put you into corner, and you yourself will start hate yourself actually, and you will not learn anymore because people will not try to work with you. And yeah, so that's, yeah, humility is very important because of that reason also. We should stay grounded, and we should always be a student in every journey. We shouldn't be thought, think ourselves as a teacher. Rather, we should always think ourselves as a student. And apart from that, so, and my last question is, so many younger people will be hearing our podcast, which is our actually general audience. So, what suggestions do you want to give to them so that they can be better in their life, both in their corporate career or academic career, side by side their spiritual career, if they want to pursue that?
It's all about attention. The more
Attention is all you need.
attention is all you need. Hashtag copyright Google. I mean, I don't know. They won't give any copyright. So it's true. Attention is all you need. Whether you are trying to learn something in your subject matter, or you are trying to do any kind of meditation. Now, the way to get to that attention is to participate in activities and experiences that help you build that attention, right? So, what I would suggest to anybody, young, old, age doesn't matter over here. Try to participate in activities that help you build your attention span. And one such set of activities is the quote unquote spiritual activities. To be more precise, it could be chanting, or there are beads in this bag which help us chant. Um, Chanting or mantra meditation that can help you focus and get attention, and be very selfish in this. Be very selfish, because it's not that you are doing this chanting of a particular mantra and you have a taboo in your mind perhaps against religion or god. I'm being be very selfish. If there is a method out there which is helping you get and build your attention span, go for it, take it. Down the line you may realize that you went there to build your attention and get better in career, but it also ended up transforming not just your brain but also your heart. That is the best thing that can happen to you as well as the people around you. Hare Krishna, that's all I will say.
Thank you, Pratik, for sharing so much of your knowledge with us. And as we end our podcast, thank you for giving your time here. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you. Just one more thing I would like to say. If there is anything that has come out of my mouth in this podcast that has been good, that is the mercy of my teachers above me. And I am very much sure most of it was jargon and maybe rubbish. That's me. So if anything good and meaningful has come out, that has all the credit goes to the teachers in my life, nothing of my own. Hare Krishna.
That should be our attitude. Hare Krishna. Thank you.